Courtesy of EA, I was invited to the Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal event. I got about 7 hours hands-on and I walked away with mostly positive thoughts. Now, I've played just about every entry in the franchise up until this point, and the franchise has definitely had some ups and downs, especially with 2042, at least the launch. It's come a long way since day one, but it doesn't quite live up to the highs of the franchise's history. My last Battlefield I loved was Battlefield 1. It's been fun to see that game have a huge resurgence in anticipation of this new game, and I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. They have great leadership in place overseeing what appears to be the Avengers of EA's studios that have contributed to the Battlefield franchise over many years. I think collectively it's in good hands, and based on what I played, it seems to be the case, but just given the last couple of entries, 5 was like a lukewarm reception for most people, myself included, in 2042. It was borderline disastrous in almost every way. After what I've played and going into these open betas and this impressive debut of the multiplayer, it seems like the team is extremely confident in what they've built, and I'm starting to feel that same way. It's already a good sign that the open beta doesn't require you to pre-order, which is highly unlike EA. And Battlefield 6 really feels like a live or die scenario for the franchise. I don't think I could ever see Battlefield going away completely, but this may be the last attempt at releasing one that's hugely successful, and if it doesn't live up to expectations, maybe it goes away for a while. Although there are many great shooters on the market right now, most recently I played Doom: The Dark Ages and absolutely adored it. I still play Call of Duty a lot with my buddies, and even though we do win quite a bit in Warzone, I'm just completely burnt out on the cracked out movement and diving and sliding. It's just too much for me, man. I've been craving an old school feeling shooter in the sense where it's like not necessarily older Call of Duty, but traditional Battlefield where it's a slower pace. The weapons actually feel like they have very unique recoil patterns and are fun and interesting to use when you switch it up. I think we're in a good place with Battlefield 6, and I'll get into it. So about my time hands-on. I got about 7 hours between 2 days of playing, and I'm very happy to say that gunplay and movement feel very solid. Now, what's interesting is that Battlefield Studios have said that they supposedly rebuilt the combat from the ground up to incorporate the new kinesthetic combat system. And that's kind of a loaded term. I mean, some of it's new, and some of it's familiar or returning from previous games, like the combat roll, for example. If you're evading enemy gunfire and you jump off a cliff or a bridge or something, you can temper the fall by rolling into it. And in the trailer, it looks pretty disorienting, and it is in-game as well, but I found in the settings if that's too disorienting for you to see, you can turn it off, which is nice. I think the coolest addition is being able to drag a teammate and heal them and bring them behind cover. It's basically the reverse of say Warzone or Fortnite or any Battle Royale, or maybe even Gears, for example, where someone goes down and they can crawl to you. That feels a little more grounded and realistic to say that your wounded soldiers on the ground, you gotta drag him to cover is a cool feature. And I found that very useful while I was playing for a couple of days. Of course, peeking and leaning and mounting is pretty standard in a lot of shooters these days, but I appreciate that the peeking and leaning is automatic, so I'm not having to overthink when I'm in cover about pressing a certain key to lean a certain direction. It's just completely automatic, and I found it very responsive in the few times I used it. And I think the general speed on foot feels pretty good. It's not super fast, obviously, but it's not ultra slow. I'd call it moderate for the most part. The reason I bring up the quote of them saying that they rebuilt the combat system is that I have not played a ton of 2042, but recently leading up to this reveal event, I played quite a bit just to be familiar with the franchise again. And this game feels pretty similar. Now, of course, they don't have tac sprint, which I'm so happy about, but it does feel very similar to 2042's movement for the most part, just maybe a tad slower. Now, I did play at an FOV of 120, so everything you see will naturally look a bit quicker because of that wide point of view. But while I was playing, especially on the big maps, it did not feel like I was zipping around, and I didn't feel like anyone I was ever shooting at, whether it was at mid-range, close-up, or especially at a distance, ever felt like they were too quick. I liked getting around on foot. I liked the roadie run feature when you're crouched and you can basically move quicker while keeping your head down. Was also kept me alive many times, especially when snipers were firing at me and I'm moving between pieces of cover. And the sprint's not too much. Again, this is something between the open betas. I think if you can get your hands on the game, you'll understand what I'm saying is that it looks faster than it feels to play, which I appreciate. Now, gunplay feels awesome as well to me. And again, whether you're on controller or on mouse and keyboard, they're gonna look and feel a little different, especially in presentations. So I was on mouse and keyboard, and generally I feel like in every shooter I play in mouse and keyboard, recoil is much more controllable. So a lot of the streamers you've probably seen gameplay for, even my own in this video, a lot of the gunplay probably looks a little too still or steady. And I think it's a situation where the recoil isn't necessarily visual, but you can feel it. And I can say with confidence that every weapon I tried, I didn't try all of them, but I tried multiple assault rifles, a couple of carbines, a couple of DMRs, a sniper, and an LMG, handgun. They all have very different recoil patterns, which I think makes the gameplay feel very fresh. And a major plus for me is the time to kill. I did not feel across any weapon I used that the time to kill is way too high. Now, if someone just has a crack shot and nails you in the head from afar with any weapon, you're gonna go down much quicker. But even when I was nailing shots in like the chest for the most part, I did not feel too long or too short. It's rare when I play any multiplayer game and I feel like the time to kill is just right, especially before the game launches. Now again, I've only played 7 hours. Maybe I'll feel a little different if I spend more time with it in this beta coming up. And it's been interesting to hear people's responses to what I kind of describe as the hybrid weapon system. Now, I personally am a bit more traditional with my taste in Battlefield, where I like the classes to be hyper-focused on their strengths. And that involves locking weapons to said classes. For example, assault rifles, I think engineers SMG, and then supports, LMGs and snipers, or recon a sniper. So while I am a bit of a traditionalist and I sort of lean that way, I kind of like their idea for the hybrid system that I think satisfies both crowds. So currently, if you equip, let's say you're playing assault, you equip an assault rifle for the assault class, you get an extra training option, which are new perks that sort of amplify certain things that class can do. For example, you'll have improved health regeneration and reduced penalty when shooting while moving, or for recon, you'll have the ability to remain undetected by enemy equipment unless you're sprinting. And each class has a number of additional perks you can use when you're using the weapons designated for their classes. Now, on the other hand, you can switch it up and use whatever weapon you want with whatever class you're playing. And I think the only benefit to that is when you're playing with a dysfunctional squad, say you don't have 3 friends to play with, you're playing with randoms. Most squads, when you're playing with randoms, just spread out and it's not effective at all in trying to win the match. So if there's a tank just obliterating your team and the guy on your team is an engineer, is just not doing his job and trying to take it down with a rocket launcher, you can temporarily equip a rocket launcher and deal with it yourself. That's a case-by-case scenario. Not everyone may think the way I do, but I like that I have the option open to me to equip another weapon if I desperately need to and I'm really in the mood to win. And Battlefield Studios has said that they're going to test both systems in the open beta. I think there will be a period of time where the weapons are locked exclusively to the classes they're designed for, and I think players will also have the chance to play the game as it's currently built. So as of right now, I don't really have any complaints because I did see and experience the benefit of using said perks for all the classes when I use the appropriate weapon, but I also sort of like the freedom of being able to switch it up when I feel like it. And my first minor concern is the destruction system that they're calling tactical destruction in Battlefield 6. And when they said the keyword tactical destruction, my heart sank a little bit because I almost knew what they were talking about immediately. In Battlefield 6, the destruction is more prevalent than it has been in a long time. If I remember correctly, Battlefield 1 had decent destruction, but they specifically name-dropped the Bad Company games, which I'm a massive fan of. Adored those games back in the day. So that's their North Star of the destruction system, and I can say that there is a lot of destruction in the game. Countless walls blowing up, and bridges, and mortars creating massive holes in the ground. Of course, breaking floors out from underneath people is cool. All the smoke, debris, and explosions add a lot to the atmosphere. But I did regularly encounter many walls that did not budge when I attacked them with either a rocket launcher, a grenade launcher, or a C4. And I specifically tested this because when they said in the presentation tactical destruction, I figured that meant some areas will either not break at all or they'll always break roughly the same way. And that's pretty much what the situation is. So for example, I could probably do a supercut of all the walls across all the maps I played on that I tested to see if they would blow up. And it wasn't a situation where I used just one rocket and nothing happened and I'd call it a day. I would shoot all my rockets in my arsenal at a single wall, and of course you'd see like dust and scrapes and damage on the wall, but it wouldn't break down. So that was my first concern, is like, oh, okay, so you can't truly destroy the map like the old Levolution system, for example. The reason why that sort of bums me out is that I think Embark Studios' The Finals, which is a game I've probably played about 15-20 hours of, has been eating Battlefield's lunch with destruction for a while now. I love that that game is truly dynamic, and that when you hit a wall or a floor or any structure at a certain angle, and depending on what you hit it with, it will break apart differently and creates dynamic rubble. So in Battlefield 6 is different in that, let's say you destroy this gigantic side of a building. It looks spectacular when it falls apart and hits the ground, but I noticed you'll see it do a pre-made animation where the rubble becomes an actual like ramp to lead up into an area. So that's what they mean by tactical. They said the reason they design it in a way where it's a little more predictable is to feed and curate the tactical gameplay, for example. So you can plan your attacks and you can kind of learn how the maps break apart so you can use that in your strategy. And on one hand, I totally understand the sentiment. I get why with game design that would make sense, but me personally, I love the chaos and intensity of Battlefield so much that I like the idea of the destruction being totally random. Let's say you bring down a giant wall or a whole side of a building. If that rubble was truly dynamic and physics-based, where let's say it doesn't create a perfect ramp to get up into the building, you still gotta find another way in or whatever you were trying to do with that building. I just find it way more replayable ultimately, not being able to predict exactly how things break apart. It's a bit of a nitpick, but again, I'm not a game designer and I barely understand like the true nuances and depth of game development. That's just a personal taste of mine. Did it ruin my experience? Not at all. I still had a great time with the destruction I experienced and did truly use it tactically multiple times where I knew someone would be hiding behind a piece of cover, or of course the occasional floor and breaking it apart and revealing them and being able to take them out was satisfying, definitely, but maybe it'll change a little bit over time. The game already has so much going on already, especially when you're playing on the big maps and the big modes. All those players, all the vehicles, all the destruction already happening. If it was truly physics-based and dynamic, then the game would probably explode. But in its current state that I've played, it runs remarkably smoothly. Again, it was a decked out PC, but what I played was almost entirely bug-free, did not lag, and it was a good time because of that. My second minor concern is how reliable their Javelin anti-cheat is. If you played any number of multiplayer shooters of the last few years, you've probably endured cheaters, and it's become pretty rampant at this point. It isn't in every match, and not even every night I play with my friends do we encounter cheaters, and I'm not the kind of player that cries wolf every time I think someone is cheating in a game. Some people are just that good, but cheating is usually pretty obvious, and I think the reason why is because a lot of cheaters are so shameless in cheating, because presently, despite the various anti-cheats across all these multiplayer games, there isn't a true sense of security, especially with Activision not verifying emails, for example. People just have hundreds of burner accounts where they can get in and out of a game if they get busted cheating like it's no problem. So it's a huge fire in the industry that developers are trying to put out, but I don't think they'll ever permanently put it out. So I can only hope that Javelin works more effectively than I think it's Ricochet for Call of Duty. I haven't played much 2042. I don't know if cheating's a problem in that game. I doubt it'll ever be cheat-free, but a very reduced cheat experience in Battlefield, it'll make it just that much better. But we'll see, maybe we'll get a taste of that in the open beta, and certainly when the game launches, we'll know for sure. So a little bit about the maps. The game's launching with 9 on day 1. A few of them, of course, are built specifically for the big modes, but even the smaller modes like Domination, Team Deathmatch, Squad Deathmatch are all taking place on those same maps, just in smaller slices of the maps that already exist. In games, again, like Call of Duty, it isn't always a good thing and they don't translate as well. But in Battlefield 6, at least so far, I felt these smaller slices of the existing maps were pretty solid. Notably Empire State and Siege of Cairo. The smaller sections of those felt good to play. I never felt like I was truly overwhelmed by a team or caught in too many spawn traps. And the game does obviously feel faster because you're in much tighter quarters. And it's not my preferred way to play Battlefield, but what I did play, I did have a good time with. I'm really excited for the Brooklyn map. I can't recall the last time I played a shooter that had, or at least a Battlefield game that had a map that was based in a major American city like that. And Liberation Peak feels like a classic large-scale Battlefield map. It feels similar to one of the maps in Battlefield 1. I can't remember the name of it, but I love the mountainous terrain. I love the snow. I love how it perfectly accommodates vehicles, and just this giant circle of a map felt really good to navigate. And I'm also pretty stoked about the vehicles. I like that they're built tough and don't break down easily and require quite a few hits from, say, rocket launchers and C4, depending on where you hit them, to actually make them explode. One thing I've hated about recent Halo, especially Halo Infinite, is that the vehicles feel like paper mache. It almost makes them totally useless. There's also way too many ways to bring them down. So I love that I can get in any number of vehicles and trust that I can navigate the map effectively and not immediately be destroyed by the enemy team. I forgot to mention with the kinesthetic combat system that you can also hang on to the outside of vehicles now. So let's say there's a vehicle, you're in a squad of 4 and your buddy's the 5th wheel. You can all get in a vehicle and he or she can hold on to the back of a tank or the side of a vehicle to navigate with you. And the tank specifically hanging onto the back of them I can see being a tactical advantage when you want to scale into an area and you don't want to run in next to a vehicle, but you can take cover behind it hanging onto the back of it and move a bit quicker as you're moving with the rest of your squad. So I think it's a pretty cool feature. And one mode I didn't get to try but I'm very interested in is the shiny new mode called Escalation. So Escalation is essentially another version of Conquest, but as teams capture points, fewer points become available, ultimately culminating in one final point where they say it's just all-out war, insane intensity, fighting over the last point. But I'm very interested to see if we'll get to play it in the open beta because it sounds awesome. Alright, so the Firestorm tease, if they're still calling it Firestorm. I think the initial Firestorm, I think I played maybe 3 or 4 matches of the original Firestorm. It just did not appeal to me back in the day. Which is funny because I think it was Battlefield's response to the trend. It was like their version of like, we've got to meet this trend, just put it together and throw it out there. I know people have played it a lot more in the past and said they had a good time with it, but I always felt it was the alpha version of something they're actually capable of making. I've long believed that Battlefield should easily have the best Battle Royale experience because the game essentially translates automatically to it. So I'm hoping the new version of Firestorm is just a much more impressive version of what they started with. All I know is that it takes place in California. It looks like you can ride in golf carts and generally looks like it's a more lighthearted take on the multiplayer experience. Warzone in particular needs some real competition and I am hoping that Battlefield Studios has it in them. I trust they do between all 4 of those studios to come up with something that is relatively unique and stands on its own and gives players a whole new experience of what that mode is capable of, so fingers crossed. Notably, this one's releasing with a lot more to chew on day one with a single player campaign, all the multiplayer we've seen so far, and something I'm especially excited for is the next iteration of Portal. I didn't spend too much time with Portal in Battlefield 2042, but it looks like it's evolved into a toolset that's similar to Halo's Forge, with more control over NPCs and manipulation of terrain and all the crazy custom games you create. I mean, that's something I love to jump into when you just have a bad night, you're getting destroyed by everyone. It's just fun to go into just a crazy community curated experience, whether it's like they've teased like a top-down shooter or a horde mode. I mean, there's all kinds of creative stuff that players can get away with. The Halo community is one thing with their brilliant Forge community, but if that same level of ingenuity comes to Portal, I think just the sky's the limit for great experiences. And I also love that you gain experience by playing those modes. Battlefield says there's no penalty whatsoever, so I'm assuming you could just live in Portal exclusively and still rank up and unlock weapons and, I don't know, pieces of gear or gadgets, whatever it may be. They haven't talked about the progression system too much. That's something I'm a little still concerned about because they haven't been too transparent about the seasonal content. They claim it's going to be free when it comes to the game and just continually updated. If that's the case, I imagine they'll have some sort of marketplace, but I don't think I'm alone in hoping that they don't add licensed or crazy skins to the game. Thankfully, Vince Impella did say that the team acknowledges that they're a modern military shooter, and they left it at that. Now, it's a little cryptic, but it sounds hopeful to me that we're not going to see, Beavis and Butthead or American Dad, Terminator. Although those skins look impressive, it's just completely killed Call of Duty's identity. I mean, it's basically Fortnite at this point. And on one hand, I don't blame publishers for wanting to incorporate that stuff, because if you look around in games like it, I mean, the whales is what the industry calls them. They buy these skins and you see them all over the place. I don't buy them myself. Sometimes I'm amused by them, but I don't want to see that in every shooter I play specifically, and Battlefield is the place that I'm hoping I can go to have that grounded, slower paced, more tactical experience. Of course, the chaotic, broad scale intensity of game modes like Conquest and Breakthrough and Rush, but free from all the ridiculous skins. Overall, I had a really good time. It seems pretty polished already. We can only hope that through all the Battlefield Labs playtesting and of course the feedback they get from this beta, it launches significantly smoother than 2042 did, because I think they know they can't have a repeat of that. And right now I feel optimistic about it. Cautiously, of course, because you never know with game releases these days. And I want to be transparent in saying that EA did fly me to LA to attend the event and put me in a hotel. The luxury of being able to pay my own way to these events is something I hope to achieve eventually, because as of now and always up until now, I've covered games entirely for free and for fun. I truly do it for the love of the game, for the love of the industry, and I want you to know my thoughts are not swayed by the glitz and glamour of attending these events. I've attended many over the years, and while there is a genuine sense of developers wanting to present the game in its most raw state and have general feedback and reporting on the state of their games before they release, I'm not swayed by the literal whining and dining you go through these events. I greatly appreciate it. It's all part of the fun, but it does not remotely influence the way I talk about a game. Everything I've shared today are entirely my own thoughts. I don't speak on behalf of any other fans, any community, or any other outlets or media or influencers. It's entirely my own opinion. And like I said, optimistic, but cautiously, and I hope you are as well. So after everything I've shared, if you have any questions that I haven't covered in this video, feel free to comment them below. I always respond to comments and encourage you to do so. If you made it to the end of the video, I can't thank you enough for sticking around to hear my thoughts, because there are so many voices on YouTube alone and just in the industry overall. The fact that you'd stop by and hear what I have to say means a lot to me, so thank you for that. My name's Garrett Drake. This is COD Connected. If you want any more Battlefield 6 coverage, you can check out 2 gameplay videos on our channel right now. One's of Conquest and one's of Domination. And for more on Battlefield 6 and all things gaming, stay tuned to COD Connected.